is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
And good afternoon and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm David Taffet, and I'm here with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink, who did something today for the first time. She ran in at the last minute like she always did. Lerone, what didn't she do today?
There's no phone call.
There was no phone call to tell us. Her phone call for 17 years, every Sunday, 52 weeks a year, is, "Hi, I'm running a little bit late." And she is so prompt about that. Today we didn't get the phone call. We were worried you were in an accident.
To thank for that.
So what happened? You were
I haven't
suggested not to change something.
Yeah, I haven't upgraded to the new OS, and it keeps pushing that. Do you want to do it now? Want me to do it now? Want me to do it now? And
Erin told her not to do it. So what did she do?
No, I didn't do it. And so, but it's getting very upset with me that I haven't upgraded to the new OS, and so it just shut down.
Oh.
And so I finally got it to restart, to get going, restarting. But that was basically my whole trip over. So I didn't get a chance because I had no device. It wasn't available to me.
I feel like I've come in on like a really special day.
It is.
This is like the first in 17 years.
First time in 17. She didn't tell us that she's running late.
And that other voice is our guest.
Our guest is Brandi, Amara, Skyy.
Welcome, Brandi.
Hi.
Brandi is a female impersonator. She has a new book that's just out this week. Her book is called The Art of Drag. She hates Will and Grace, and she wants to take your guns away from you.
I knew it.
Welcome, Brandi.
Thank you for that lovely intro,
We're
David.
Get along great.
Where should we start? Why she hates Will and Grace, or...
This is like a continuum of our Friday conversation.
Yeah. Okay, so I called you a female impersonator. You are a female.
I am a cisgendered female, yes.
So where did you learn to impersonate women?
Well, I've been a part of the drag community since I was 16. So I saw my first drag queen when I was 16, and I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. How do I do it? At that time, there wasn't really anything that I saw that looked like me out there. And so I got involved with the community. So I filmed drag queens. I put a documentary out on our local PBS station. And so I got really involved with the community. I was also coming out at the time. So that was like the time that it all merged. And I went to college, did my BA in dance, and I really started exploring this whole idea of the queer aesthetic in relationship to me being gay and in relationship to drag. And so then I moved to Dallas. I found Gay Bingo. I started working at the Resource Center. And that was the first time that I got to be on stage with an up-and-coming rising star, Jenna Skyy. Oh, yeah. And so we were coming up at the same time. And so I backup danced for her, I choreographed. And finally Miss Lifewalk came around, and I was asking her to do the pageant, the Miss Lifewalk pageant, and she was like, no, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what, I'll do it. And so that was actually my first time that I said, I'm going to be on stage, I'm going to do drag, and it was for the Miss Lifewalk pageant in 2010, I believe.
Wow.
So that's kind of the short version of my long journey.
So Lerone, Patti, what you're going to find is there is no short version.
It's okay, David. We've been dealing with you for 17 years.
That's why I love her.
I'm kind of like the female version of David.
That's why I love her. What kind of reception did you get? Because what you're doing is drag, which is traditionally a man dressing as a woman.
I think I get this question a lot, and I think I got a really good response because I was so involved with my community before I ever stepped foot on stage. Before I went in and called myself, a drag queen, I identify as a drag artist. I don't believe that drag is about gender. It's about the art of queer expression. So I identify as a drag artist. And so I think because I was so involved with the community that they were much more receptive to having me on stage. I've performed in the Rose Room. I was the first, cisgendered female to perform on a Friday and Saturday night. So I've been really welcome in the Dallas drag community and in the drag community in general in the United States. So
you performed outside of Dallas.
Oh yeah, I was the first Miss Diva US of A in 2014. It's an actual US of A subdivision pageant, and I toured all over the United States and out of the world. Yeah.
So what kind of reception did you get in like some smaller cities like New York or?
Well, New York, there's a really huge, population of club kids and, gay culture. And, they're a lot more accepting, as is San Francisco. So when you get to either side of the coast, they're a lot more receptive to anything that's non-traditional drag related.
When you perform in other cities, do most of the, audience even know that you're cisgender?
No. And that's what I really
still don't know
about
that she's cisgender.
Are you going to check?
But that's what I love. I love getting on stage and people going, is that a real girl? Is that a boy? I love that whole idea of gender effing. I can't say that word on air, I was told.
Oh, good. She got the message.
I know, because you remember it.
Because my finger's been on the button.
Right.
So, yeah, I think, I performed in Missouri. I performed in all these spaces, and there really are a lot of people in there that want to do drag and do these things that they see in non-traditional spaces, but they don't see themselves. And I feel like when I went out, I was able to say, hey, look, here I am. There's people out there doing things that you want to do. Come join us, kind of.
We were talking a little bit about it before the show, and there is actually a good big example of that. In the original La Cage aux Folles on stage, when Harvey Fierstein wrote the play, he wrote into it that the cast of the drag bar would include one or two actual females. So at the end, when they're taking their applause, they come out on stage, they line up across the front of the stage, they all take their wigs off, and that's where they reveal which one's the actual woman.
And I love it. Yeah, I had no idea.
So are you the only one that you know of?
No. There's a lot in Dallas.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot more since I started back in 2010. I was the first, and now there's a whole lot more. And actually, the Miss Texas Diva US of A pageant is happening November 10th at Sue Ellen. So that's where it's the pageant for cisgender divas. What I do. That was what I was going.
I got to go to that. I've been to so many drag shows.
Let me know, and
I've never been to that.
I'll comp you a ticket. Just
Please.
Don't bring David. Patty, you can come too.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah, Josh, we'll be on the outside booing.
I'll live video it for you, David.
Oh, thank you.
On Facebook, since we're Facebook friends.
Thank you.
So you never considered doing like a drag king?
No, I do not have a masculine bone in my body. Like as much as I really want to be that butch lesbian, I'm just not. Although I am stronger than I appear, though. Dynamite comes in small packages.
Well, that's exactly. See, she speaks for me.
Yes.
Okay, so she has a new book out this week, which she completely forgot about.
It's because I'm
busy.
I do like 85 different things all at once, and so I got home and I was like, oh, that's right, my book is on Kindle. I should go out and publicize it on Facebook, and I completely forgot to say that the book was being released on DBTV on the radio.
So she has a new book. Last time your book came out, you kind of forgot about it, right, Patty?
Yeah. I totally forget every time I publish a book.
Tell us a little bit about your book.
So the book is called The Craft of Drag, and basically it goes through, the number one question I get asked when I'm on the road or when I'm doing things is, do you have any advice for anybody who's just starting out in drag? And so this book is literally like 200 pages, it's way more on Kindle, of my answer to that question. And going from, how do you get involved with the community, and tips and ideas to get involved with your community, and I think that's a big part, to like picking out wigs, to costumings, to finding your drag style, to finding your drag trademark, to branding yourself. It kind of covers that whole spectrum of anybody who's wanting to get started in drag, what they need to do, and the history, because I think it's really important that, especially for cisgendered females doing drag, that we know the history of it. And so it goes through the history as well.
That's really important.
It's super important. And that's the number one argument, like when RuPaul or Willem, they have against, biodrag, they're like, well, you need to know your history, and, you don't know enough about drag. And I'm really big on educating my fellow community and saying, yes, you do. You need to know this. And especially cis straight women that are coming in and doing drag. They more so than they need to know what they're representing and what that queer culture is.
What is some of the criticism that you get from people, or do you get criticism locally?
I have never received criticism locally, but I think that also has to do because I've been involved in the community for so long. I have gotten...
You've earned your stripes, so to speak.
I've earned my stripes, and people know me, and they know that, I worked for the resource. This wasn't just something I stepped on stage and say, here, accept me. Like, I committed, I worked for the center, I worked for my LGBT community, I'm an activist, like, they know me. And when I go out, it's a little bit more difficult, or sometimes I do, because, like, some people think traditional drag, it's just men dressing up as women, and so they can't get away from that traditional definition, and so they're like, well, you're a real woman, you can't do drag because you're a real woman, because this traditional definition of drag is this. They're thinking about a bio-inversion drag as opposed to expression.
Okay, we had a caller, and we sometimes do this. We get ahead of ourselves, just assuming some things. Explain, first of all, what cisgender means.
Cisgender is when you, the body that you were born in is the same as what you identify in as a person.
So for the caller, it would be you were born a woman, you know that you're a woman.
You're assigned female at birth.
As opposed to a trans woman who born with a male body but understands... Which way was that going? Okay, born with a male body and identifies as being a female.
Assigned male at birth.
Assigned male at birth, exactly, and they identify as a female.
Was there another part of that question, Josh?
So what is the history?
Oh, and a little bit of the history of
female drag queens? Well, David and I were actually talking about this, and a lot of it I started in film, but from my research, and I did my MA thesis on female drag queens. So from my research, in New York, there was a performer named Carmelita Tropicana, and she performed at the Wow Cafe in New York, and this was like 70s or 80s, and she was the first lesbian that I saw in my research that kind of identified what she was doing as a form of drag. And I know that in film it goes way back. Le Cage Follies was what year?
Oh, La Cage aux Folles, the version that I'm talking about is the stage version, which is like 1982-ish.
The movie came out in, what, 1960?
No, it was more like about 1970, the original film.
So was that female represented?
No, that was strictly a stage version. So that happened
in the 80s.
Yeah.
But even before that, you had like Mae West, you had all of, these females who were
Marlene
presenting...
Dietrich.
Yes, this hyper femininity and what I like to call a flaminity. So like... That's where it started.
And actually,
Patty's laughing at me.
It's a great word.
I'm saying Marlene Dietrich, but Marlene Dietrich was more a woman dressing as a man.
Yeah, yes. Mae West, but I'm talking about like Mae West. She was very hyper femme,
right?
And so you see like the birth of this whole idea of hyper femininity in the movies, and it kind of trickled down into the stage, and then. From the stage, I mean, we've been a part of gay, lesbians and queer women in general have been a part of gay culture for forever. And I think there was some undergroundness that happened, but the first like real folk queen that anybody ever heard of, folk queen is also bio queen, lady queen, drag artist, anybody who's cisgendered female identified as a drag performer, was Phonique. And she's from San Francisco, and she was the first female drag queen to win a pageant called Tranny Shack back in the early 90s, I believe. And so there's been these subcultures, on like I said, on the two sides of the coast, but now it's kind of getting more mainstream because of the advent and the introduction of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Right.
And so now we're seeing it more, we're hearing it more, but this culture has been around since my research, is, early 80s, late 70s, but I'm sure it extends far beyond that. I just haven't, dug deep into that.
As far as drag or cisgender?
Cisgender drag. Okay. I'm talking about female drag. Drag goes way back, girl. Yeah.
I just saw this documentary last night, The Death and Life of Marsha P., who died in New York City. She was drag also. Anyway, it's just a great great film, and she dates way back to the 60s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, drag, extends. far beyond that.
You're making the 60s sound like they were
Like it's so long
ancient.
ago.
You're like,
No, they're not.
I don't know. I'm just like noticing it. It's like it goes all the way back to the 90s. I'm like, I was out of college in the 80s.
But drag itself as an art form goes back, that I know of, it was very popular in Provincetown in the 1940s. And when I say I know about it, you know, everybody wants to know, oh, Stonewall, beginning of gay people. There were never gay people.
There were never
You
gay
know,
people
I was
before
in school
Stonewall.
in the early 70s in college, and my role models were my professors who had served in World War II, and I had several professors who were, you know, gay men. And one of them, he was the head of the French department at my school, and he had a house out in Provincetown, so we went several times to visit him out in Provincetown. Anyway, that culture I know in Provincetown, probably in a couple of other places, you know, around the country, dates back at least to the 40s and probably back into the 20s.
Because we've been around since the beginning of time.
We
Sure.
really have.
You know, in every culture, in every part of the world. You know,
Yeah, I'm talking specifically about drag culture, though,
Right.
and where that comes from. So anyway, in your book, you're talking a lot about history,
I give a brief history.
and you're talking about all the things that somebody who wants to do this would need to know in order to do it, because I would think a lot of people don't even know, okay, you're a female who's dressing as a female. What is it that you're dressing as?
Right.
So what is it that you're dressing as? Do you create, or do most female drag artists, do they create a character? Are they...
I think so. I think a lot of, you know, well, in my book, I talk about creating your drag persona. And I think that's really important, that there's a separation of who you are as a person and who your drag persona is on stage. And so I think a lot of, you know, female drag artists now, yes, they have a persona and they build a character, but a lot of them also aren't performing. Like, there are a lot of look queens, so they just get in makeup and they get in drag, and, you know, they go to the club, you know, the club kids, you know, it's a new name for club kids. But I think it's important that you build a persona, and that for female, especially for female drag queens, that there's some kind of transformation, you know, physical transformation from what you look like as in girl makeup and what you appear like in drag. There needs to be a physical, yeah.
We need to take a break. We're talking to Brandi Amara Skyy. She performs at S4 in the Rose Room. She performs at Sue Ellen's. She is a drag artist.
I'm a drag artist,
I was
yes.
calling her a female impersonator
okay.
because I had, well, no, because I...
'Cause you're old.
No, because I didn't know.
just learned.
I didn't know who or what she was. I mean, I've never seen this person before in my life. Her new book is The Craft of Drag. She hates Will and Grace. We'll find out why right after this.
I'm Jelinski Brown with Research Center United Black Element, and I listen to Lambda Weekly radio program on 89.3 Knon, the voice of the people. I am the people, so hear me speak.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink. Our guest is Brandi Amara Skyy.
Right before the break, we were talking about, David posted a question of who do cisgendered females impersonate, or who do they dress up as when they're doing drag? And I think all of it, you know, typically is a cisgender man who's doing drag. A lot of times they are impersonating a certain woman, particularly female artists. Like, oh God, we've seen a million shares.
Reba
McEntire, Madonna, Janet Jackson. You know, the list goes on and on and on. But some of them, even when they're not impersonating a certain artist, it's still hyperfemininity, because a drag artist, drag queen, whatever, they don't look like a cisgender everyday woman. So I don't. Where some people might think, okay, this doesn't make sense, a cisgender female doing female drag. It makes total sense to me.
And I think what people need to do is separate drag from a gender expression and put it into a queer expression. And why I say that is because when you think about drag in its traditional historical sense, you know, Shakespeare, all this, you know, men on stage performing as women, it's extremely misogynistic. But something happens when a queer culture takes something and reclaims it and changes it up, kind of like the rainbow flag. The rainbow flag was always there, and then, you know, you had Gilbert Baker, who took the flag. It became a pride symbol, and so as a queer culture, we infused that meaning, and we infused it with meaning that it wasn't originally there. And so for me, drag is kind of the same way. So it has this history rooted in theater, but over here, once we got a hold of it, we infused it with that queerness and that queer lens that heteronormative society doesn't necessarily see. And so with that queer perspective, it changes everything, because we are not heterosexual, and so that queerness changes it in the aspect of it's no longer, for me personally, a man impersonating a female. It's its own new queer expression. It's its own new kind of entity. So it's what I call a femininity. It's a whole brand new world, and not this whole dichotomy of male and female. And so that's kind of where I feel.
Do you know the other movie that sort of does this, but there's one step left out, is Victor Victoria, but there it's a woman impersonating a man impersonating a woman. And you've taken out that middle step.
And a lot of cisgendered female drag queens feel that way, and a lot of people, a lot of them identify as a drag queen or as a folk queen or biological queen or a lady queen because they feel like they are a female pretending to be a male, pretending to be a drag queen, and that's how they identify. And I feel like everything is right. It's just how you choose to identify your art.
It's how you get there too, because that femininity is there, and you can approach it from different angles.
Yeah, it's a flamboyant femininity. So you're taking the femme out of the entity, removing the female, and you're bringing in the flamboyant, which is exactly what we are as queens. We're flamboyant.
You've mentioned RuPaul several times so far in relation to drag. Do you know if cisgender females can perform on his show?
No.
Okay.
No,
I know some of the pageants, they have certain rules.
Yeah, and even as far as I know, trans women are not also allowed on his.
They're not. I do remember after the second season of his show, one of the contestants, after the show was over, revealed that she was trans.
Carmen, I think that was Carmen
Yes,
Carrera.
and had she done that before, she would not have been able to compete.
Yeah. And so RuPaul's Drag Race is very along the same similar lines as Miss Gay America. It's very traditional, quote unquote, traditional drag where, there's no body modifications, there's nothing. It's literally a cis male performing as a female. But then you have, sex like US of A, Miss Continental, and these, pageants where they allow trans bodies, to compete. And also this new pageant that just came out for femme queens, also folk queens, same lingo. It is National EOI Femme. They recently just crowned their first trans queen. So
awesome.
Yeah, so I think we get so stuck in saying that drag is just this and this. It's black and white. It's this whole idea of bio and version of gender. It's not. Like we are limiting ourselves as a culture when we don't allow ourselves to express ourselves fully and as colorfully as we are.
Do you know something? We always get caught up in pronouns, and so I did a story this week, and it was about the state fair and somebody performing at the state fair. So it's somebody who's normally identified or is mostly known in the community for her drag persona, and I said, should we use your boy name or your girl name, because in the state fair he's performing as a scarecrow, actually.
That's a whole nother pronoun.
Gender fluid, yeah.
So he's
gender fluid.
Well, what he said was, I don't care, but I was using the girl name, and it was, what pronoun do we use? I said, he kept calling him, was he. But that doesn't sound right in here. But that's what we ended up using the she. And it was really it doesn't matter. In this particular case, it doesn't matter. So we didn't really care. I do want to ask you, why do you hate Will and Grace?
Well, before you answer, there's a lot of gay and lesbian people who don't like Will and Grace.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, because it felt really one-sided.
Okay, so this
was really
was
one-sided the last time I had this conversation.
Lerone wanted to have this, wants us to do a whole show where the three of us, Patti and Lerone and I, disagree. So, okay, let's start disagreeing.
That would be one of them. That would be one of the things we would have on our show.
Because you had some real good points about it.
First off, I don't hate Will and Grace. I've never seen an episode. I don't really care to see an episode, but my reasoning behind it is because High five. Is because for me, like, it started the whole gay male trope, gay best friend trope, this whole idea of gays being accessories. You know, it started in 80 whatever year it started. Then you had Queer Eye for the straight guy that kind of, you know, backpedaled on that. And it's also a really white representation of our community. And so for those reasons, I never really felt pulled into the show like I did Queer as Folk. I loved Queer as Folk.
I did too.
Yeah.
And well, just to be fair, I can't believe you guys have never actually seen that one episode.
I've never seen one episode.
Never watched a whole.
Really?
I've never.
The most I've seen is like the ads where it's coming back.
Or GIFs. I've seen
yeah.
like a few, a couple, but I've never seen a full episode.
Yeah, I've never watched a whole episode of it.
Now, I have my criticism of the show, but in general, I like it. It's not my favorite.
It's very white.
It's very white. I don't watch the new revamped version of it, and I haven't seen a single episode.
It's only had 2 so far.
Oh, just 2. Okay, so but when it first came out, which in the early 2000s, I watched it. You know, just like
98.
Yeah. Okay.
It's that long ago.
That long
you
ago.
are that old, Lerone.
I watched it, weekly, just like everybody else did. I thought it had some good stuff to offer, but yeah, you're right. It has its negatives also.
And here's what I think of it. Do I love the show? Is it my favorite show? No.
Right, yeah.
Is it the show that transformed how America thinks? I don't think there would have been an Obergefell decision without that show. We're not the target audience for the show. I mean,
but Ellen was before.
But it wasn't the same kind of hit.
It really
and the
wasn't.
year that she came out,
She also lost her
she
show.
lost the show.
Yeah, 97.
97.
April
And
30th, 97.
ratings
97. It was
tanked,
gone.
and
Yeah.
that was the end of her show. What it did was it mainstreamed gay people in a way.
It did.
And not that I necessarily love that.
Well, I do, because whereas you're right, I detest this stereotype that all gay men has the best straight girlfriend, and which is what Will and Grace was. But he is the lead character. He wasn't a sub character. So that it's not totally true. He is the lead on the show.
There were several things about it. It took a couple of years before this good-looking, successful gay person who's fully out could even kiss another guy or even went on a date.
But it's progress.
But the reception wouldn't have been the same if it was a black male, gay male character lead.
It wouldn't have.
It would have been totally different.
It would have. I agree.
That's
and
also
as far as I think in the last 2 seasons of the show, the original version, he did have a black boyfriend. Tay Diggs, yeah.
He's real pretty.
He's very pretty. It just takes time, There's a lot of criticisms about Queer as Folk also. That was very white.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
But, I had to take it for what it was. You have to build on that.
That's true, though. Very true.
So, I mean, I guess I watch it. I'm not a fanatic Will and Grace
me
watcher.
either.
But I think it was real important because it allowed a lot of people who never knew a gay person
I agree.
to see, oh, he's a gay person and he's kind of normal. Now, we all know that the only real gay character that all of us identified with was Karen.
Now, I liked the characters. Like, when she came for Black Tie, I thought she was very entertaining and very funny, and she had her real side, too, and, that sort of thing. But I appreciated the characters. I do think it's interesting, though, that Sean Hayes is back as in the new recreation of Will and Grace, and he's out.
In real
He
life.
was not out.
He came out when the show went off the air.
Yeah.
The thing is, that's an interesting story about Sean. He was out before Will and Grace. He had already made a movie called
So-and-so's Big Hollywood something.
Yeah, something. It was an independent gay film, really cute film. It was very much out. As soon as Will and Grace started, he went back in the closet.
See, and that's not good for
Yeah, and that wasn't
either.
good.
Like,
And it
that's
wasn't until
not-
the show ended that he came back out again, and he did say that he just didn't handle it right. If he could go back and do things over again, he would. That's his own personal trajectory in coming out. I don't know what the reasons were.
Yeah.
But the show, I thought it was well written. It was funny. Gays were the butt of the jokes, but so were straight white women also. So I don't know. It's middle ground for me.
Maybe I'll watch an episode.
And it wasn't.
Maybe I'll watch one.
And it wasn't very long after that, and I'll look it up during the break, that Ellen came back in
Yes.
full force
Yes.
as a daytime entertainer and had her own show, which continues to win Emmys.
Yep.
And she has been a real voice for the LGBTQ
It's been
community.
a top-rated daytime show, at times the top-rated daytime show. So I mean, that's been very important. I'm saying Will and Grace, actually Ellen did start it.
Yeah, she started it.
But that show was the show that got out to mainstream America. But it was never meant for us to be the target audience. I mean, we were...
which is a good thing because I didn't watch it.
Yeah, me too.
we could kind of watch it and be in on the joke.
Yeah.
And that's all I ever thought of that show. So, what were you going to say?
No, that's it.
Okay, so one of the points that you made also, Brandi, was that you thought that made it okay for to have your bridal party.
It was the birth of the, I don't know if I can say the word, F-hag. You know, it was the birth of that, and I don't necessarily, I think it made it okay. I think it opened the doors to that. What go?
The F-Hag, that had been around a long time before Will and Grace. I think
but it mainstreamed.
It did mainstream.
Made it
mainstream. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest movies around that time was My Best Friend's Wedding, based on the same premise.
Yep.
And that was before Will and Grace.
Yeah, but it brought it into people's homes, like every day.
It did.
You know,
but what is the party before people get married? The day before the
bachelorette
dinner?
The what?
The bachelorette party.
The bachelorette party. And a lot of them moved to the gay bars.
Yes. And they're still there. They are still there.
Oh my! And I think they're there more than ever now.
And I think they are too. And I actually wrote an article on Global Grind, and it's called "Thank You RuPaul for telling bachelorette parties." Or thank you, RuPaul, for telling straight girls at gay clubs to check themselves. And I think this is a discussion that we've had for a really long time. And I think there comes a point that I love having allies, but I also love my queer space. I love having my gay clubs. And so when they're loud and obnoxious and bringing in when they're screaming and you wouldn't do that in somebody's home. Like if I went to your home, David, I wouldn't come in here with like stuff lit up that I can't say on the air and crowns and yelling and going, hey, party.
Oh, well, then you're not coming to my house.
Exactly, and that's what they do coming into
No,
our
I'm saying
house.
if you're not going to do that, you're not coming to my house.
David is the lone wolf on this one, I think.
Yes.
But
Yes, as he always is.
But I think that's how we feel when they come in and they expect it to be about them, as if we are doing them a service, or we're lucky to have them in our gay bars, which it's not true.
It's not true. And even deeper than that, I think it's pretty offensive, or when they come to our space and they use us as their accessories.
Yes.
And because the last one went to a drag show, which was just this summer, there was a bridal bachelorette party there, and I forgot who the performer was that night, but they called them out because, like, I know you all voted for Trump, didn't you? And they admitted that they did.
See?
And they got booed really big, from the rest of the audience. It's like, don't go vote against us or, your everyday life and, everything against us, but then when you want some fun, come and use us as an accessory. That is pretty offensive.
That's the word use, because that is really using us.
And I think, this whole idea of what they claim is that they feel safe in the environment, but those spaces weren't created for straight women to feel safe. They were created for us to feel safe, because there were no other places that we could go into that made us feel safe. So these are our safe spaces. And so when we start to feel unsafe in our safe spaces,
I think that's the key to it. I'm glad you feel safe in our spaces, so come and... I'm glad that they do feel safe in our spaces. I don't want other people to feel unsafe in our spaces, but there's a respect that we need.
And that's why the huge shooting at Pulse was such a devastation to our community, because that was our safe space.
Yes.
Exactly.
They came for our safe space and took out 49 people. And just horrific.
Well, I'm not known for segues that are appropriate. However, this one is.
This is very
Speaking of shootings, there was a terrible one this week.
Yeah.
I don't know what we can even say about it, that would add to anything that's been said. I think it's the most common thing that I've heard is from newscasters is, well, I don't even know what to say about this one. It happened again. If we call for any kind of sensible gun legislation, they're just going to tell us it's too soon, we can't be talking about it.
It's inappropriate.
It's inappropriate to talk about it right now. So what I did like was people were posting, and even on the news I heard, well, is today okay? And then the next day, well, is today okay to talk about it? Well, is today okay? So today's Sunday, we're at the end of the week. Is today okay to talk about it? You know, what do you think? Should we be talking about it?
I was talking about the first day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this has got to change. I mean, how many times as Americans is this acceptable for us just to wake up and day after day after day? I mean, there have been 355 mass shootings in the last year. Mm-hmm. That's almost one a day. Yeah. I mean, how insensitive can we be before we say, let's do something about this? Okay, we have to do something about this.
I think the best quote I saw, and I'm paraphrasing, about the shooting was, when America made it okay for our little school children to be getting shot up at Sandy Hook.
Mm-hmm. That's when we gave up.
That's when we gave up. So what happened in Las Vegas, unfortunately, is not going to change anything, and that's sad.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, what really pisses me off, though, politically, is, you know, we lost approximately 3,000 people on 9/11 in 2001, and look at the trillions of dollars that we spent avenging those deaths.
Mm-hmm. True.
3,000 people, and we've gone to Afghanistan. We made up an excuse to get into Iraq, and now we've got ISIS around the world. We're still in Afghanistan. That's a never-ending war, just like the Russians did for 20 years. We're going to win it too, because you can't win it. You just stick it out, and you get out or stick it out, and we're not spending any kind of resources like that to stop the killing of Americans in America.
And you're exactly right, Patty. And
by Americans.
By Americans. American terrorists.
Yes.
And look what happened as a result, how our lives have changed forever in the United States as a result of 9/11. Just go to the airport.
Yeah.
And it's totally different than how you had to go to the airport in the 90s and before. Why don't we have the same reaction to
Americans getting murdered, slaughtered,
left and right,
massacred?
And why aren't we calling these people terrorists?
Exactly.
Yes. I want to know why aren't people labeling him as a terrorist?
He is a terrorist.
He is a terrorist.
I had this debate with someone on Facebook about it who was insisting that no, this was an individual, not a terrorist. So I had to break it down to them even legally, and instead of Nevada, anybody who shoots up a mass crowd is considered a terrorist. They went and looked it up, and only then did they say, well, yeah, I guess he's a terrorist.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Because what's traditionally done in the media and in people's minds around this country is that when it's a white guy, it's some lone wolf who's got some mental problems.
Exactly.
And when it's a person of color who does it, it's the whole group is to blame.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, what's interesting about this guy is, with a number of them, like that one at Sandy Hook, it was kind of provable that he had some mental problems. There's very little question.
But still, he had access to lethality.
Why did he?
I'm not making an excuse for. I'm not making an excuse for this one. There's evidence that there were no mental problems.
Well, not evidence that there were no mental problems. He just doesn't have a trail. I mean, the FBI is the whole BAU that we follow in Criminal Minds. They're stumped.
But
they don't know what's going on.
That's what I'm saying. We need to take a break. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink. Brandi Amara Skyy is our guest, and we'll be back with more right after this.
This is Rollins Gilliland, and I'm listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3, and darn glad to be doing it.
And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here with Lerone and Patti, and Brandi Amara Skyy is our guest. She appears at S4 regularly down on the Strip. We were just talking a little bit about Las Vegas and the shooting. Here's the one thing where I've changed. If another person tells me, let's have a moment of silence, I've interrupted at several moments of silence this week, and I've just said, I'm not going to shut up this time. And I've walked out.
Yep, and as John Lewis, Representative John Lewis, such the civil rights icon, said this week, he said, it's get in the way. If people want you to shut you down, get in the way.
Because you understand that moment of silence comes from the right. Oh, let's do something about it. Okay, let's have a moment of silence. And they just shut you up on the subject.
And thoughts and prayers.
You know what? have your thoughts and prayers nice and privately, but do something about it.
Yeah.
Don't take that moment of silence. If you want to take a moment, call your congressperson.
Yeah.
I think the people who were murdered, slaughtered in Las Vegas would want us to do something, to take action so that other people
What is
don't
my
have to
standing
die
there?
like they did.
What is my standing there quietly for a minute going to do for them?
Nothing. But if they thought that, I mean, if they were alive today and could look back on that and say, I was killed, I was murdered, and nobody did anything, it's just happening again and again and again, I would be so pissed.
Before the break, we were talking about, did this guy, the Las Vegas terrorist, did he have mental issues or not? The guy who shot up Sandy Hook Elementary, the argument can be made that anybody who commits these kind of shootings has mental problems.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
of course.
What sane person would go do this?
And what I meant were identifiable mental problems that he was having ahead of time. This one apparently didn't. There was no way to identify him other than he bought most of his 43 semi-automatic weapons over the last year, and that didn't tip anybody off because we don't have gun registration of any sort.
And certainly not in Nevada.
Like we have in Texas. It didn't set off any warning signs that this guy bought so many semi-automatic weapons. Nobody needs an arsenal like that.
Yeah,
And not only that, how was he able to get most of that arsenal into a hotel?
In suitcases.
In suitcases.
I mean, but they really don't check your suitcases. You know what I mean? Like
They don't. And
You roll your suitcases
Yeah.
in. Like nobody stops you when you're going into Vegas and a hotel.
And certainly
and
if you
saying,
do
"I'm
it
gonna
over
search your
time.
bag."
Yeah, and if you do it over time, if you're a high roller, and he was known to be a high roller,
Yeah.
one of the things you do in Vegas is shop. I mean, there are huge palatial
Yeah.
places to shop, and you can carry in bags and bags and bags and
Well,
bags.
and you can go directly from the parking garage into the hotel. You don't have to go through the lobby with it.
Exactly.
It wouldn't set off any kind of a warning.
Yeah, they don't even have alarms. You know.
And they're talking about, now we're going to do screening when you come into the hotel. No, you're not. Because the first time I see that in a hotel that I walk into, I'm walking out. I'm not who
not
you're
gonna do
looking
it.
for. No. There's no way I'm
So
going to do
you're
that.
going to do that instead of having people register their guns or some kind of gun
Right.
registry. Like that doesn't make any
Right.
sense. So you're going to make all of us pay for this certain small sec that you refuse to have them register because that's money out of your pocket.
Exactly.
No, thank you.
Target the people who are buying the guns, not me.
Because that's what it's essentially saying, that the problem is the hotels. Mm-hmm. No, the
Yeah, or the
problem is the
security.
guns.
Yeah.
The problem is the lethality of the guns. This guy didn't have a pop gun. He didn't have a 6-shooter where you have to manually reload 6 bullets every time you use up the 6 bullets. He had lethality. Massive
And that's the only
lethality.
purpose of those guns.
Yes.
The only purpose.
So-
you
so-
don't hunt with those guns.
So here was an
You won't
excuse
have
that I
anything
heard.
to eat.
This is
Right.
why you need. This is one excuse I heard about why you need semi-automatic weapons. I only use my semi-automatic whatever at the gun range, and I get such a rush out of shooting it there. Okay, so we're weighing your rush with 58 dead people and 400 and some odd injured people. But you get a rush, and that's guaranteed under the Constitution. I don't effing think so.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you want to rush that bad, go get a video game.
Or get on a roller coaster.
Exactly.
Let me tell you, roller
Exactly.
coasters give you that same kind of adrenaline
The
rush.
video games are pretty realistic. They're virtual reality, and you can shoot everything you want. Nobody gets hurt in real life.
Yeah, and you know what I don't like about those video games? I think that's encouraging more people to buy the real ones. Ooh, I've always done this.
It's desensitizing.
I disagree with that.
I disagree.
I disagree with that.
disagree.
It's the same thing. That was the same argument used in the early 90s about when the cops were getting killed by some of the gang members. They said they blamed it on rap music.
I agree.
No,
it's not rap
no,
music.
no.
No, but I think there's a difference with the first shooter games because a kid doing that becomes literally desensitized at what the actions of his hands are doing.
They may get desensitized from that, but there's no studies or evidence to prove that these kids are growing up and doing the shooting.
Well, I think it just makes it easier for them to do the shooting.
I mean, we played with guns when we were kids.
But
Yeah,
I
but
don't
we
What do you
didn't
mean
play
that
with-
we played with guns? I remember when Barbie came out.
I played with G.I. Joe.
I love G.I. Joe. I'm not buying that one. Yeah.
See, but I think there is a correlation. So between now and the time we do our disagreement show,
we need to
I'm going to do my research.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, do your research because I'm really curious about that. But yeah.
And am I saying that because of that, these games should go away entirely? No, but I think there's a correlation.
But I think that's the onus is also on the parents to say this isn't real. This is a video game. If you did this in real life, these are the repercussions. Like, it's not the video game developers. It's not the games themselves. It's not their responsibility to be teaching our kids. It's our responsibility to be teaching our kids what's right, what's wrong, what's real, and making those associations for them.
But that's the same argument that's saying that it has nothing to do with the guns. It's about the people.
No, well,
It is. It is.
but there's a difference between video game guns and real guns. Like, that's not nearly the
Exactly.
same argument because
It's not
what
the
I'm
same
talking about is
argument.
video games.
Well, I
It's,
think
it's the same argument when I remember growing up. Kids shouldn't see so much stuff like this on TV. I'm a huge fan of horror films. I
Exactly.
knew as a kid that was fake. Cutting people's throats, Jason walking around and stalking you. I knew that was fake.
And Lerone grew up and became a vampire. So
But yeah, I
it
love
wasn't
slasher
fake.
films. I love slasher films.
I love slasher
That doesn't
films.
mean that
Yeah.
I, as a kid, I was thinking, this is okay. Like, no,
Right,
it's a
exactly.
difference between an adult making the decision to buy a gun and a kid playing a video game just for
And
fun.
I think most parents, I am a parent, have talked to their kids and they know the difference between this is just a video game, this is just a movie.
Yeah, and most parents are doing that. They're not. But the other part I'm saying
stand
you're
by-
doing that. You're taking the responsibility that a parent should have. And I think what you're saying, Brandi, as part of the responsibility there is, and get your kids away from the TV screen, because how many hours worth of shooting on a screen is healthy for a kid, and how much does the kid need to go outside and just play?
I do agree, yes.
So
Yeah, but what's the difference between the kid that sits in the video game chair and he's got all the equipment and he's first shooting and he's talking to buddies and stuff, and the guy who takes his AR-15 out on the range and gets that rush? This kid's getting a rush, or he wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, but it's a video
is
game.
getting a rush. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I totally think he's getting a rush, but there's a difference. Adults know better. Adults
No, they
know.
don't.
Some.
I think
We
this kid
place the
becomes the adult that
onus.
doesn't know better. This is the kid that grows up to be the adult that doesn't know better.
No,
Well, I am willing
need to
be,
research-
I am willing to
research
be
that.
proven wrong. Let's see what the
Okay.
research says. I
I'll do
am
that.
willing to be proven wrong. I mean, this guy who just did, how old was he? 60-something? Okay, they didn't have the kind of video games that we have now.
But
when he
every
was
case is not going to
teenager.
be a direct result of all those causes.
I just think
The most common denominator out of all these shootings is one that is going to be a man, and the other one is 99% of the time it's going to be a white.
okay, now with this one, he was an older white male, self-absorbed real estate developer. I'm not comparing him to anybody. I'm just pointing out his profile.
Who came out of nowhere and
Right.
I'm just pointing that out. I don't know if he resembles anybody that anybody knows. I would never accuse anybody else of being a psychopath, but, just throwing it out there for
And
you.
the latest I heard is his family have filed to have his assets frozen,
Yeah,
so no
I
one
heard
can
that.
touch them. I don't know what I think about that.
I'm kind of with the family of the people who were slaughtered.
I'm for having them frozen so that the assets are there, so that when they sue him, other members of his family don't benefit from his crimes.
See, that's my thought too. Is that because there've already been a lawsuit filed by the family members of someone who was killed, and they want to seize those things because they don't want anybody who in that family to profit.
Right.
Because that would literally be profit.
It would be.
Hardcore profit.
And something, from hearing the other members of the family speak, I don't think they want to profit either. They don't want to be blamed for it, but I don't think they want to profit either. I think they were pretty shocked about him. Speaking of shocked, if you're standing there and get hit on the head with a roll of paper towels by the president, now that's more like one of my segues. What would you think? I know, there's
What if
nothing
you're like,
to
I
say
need
about
nail
that.
by
Now,
rolling paper towels?
yeah, now, according to the Washington Post, the paper towels were one thing, but the next thing they were handing out in that room were canned chicken, and they had to take one out of his hand
Wow.
and explain to him that he couldn't throw heavy cans of chicken at people.
God.
Well, as one meme put it, he's the quicker after-upper.
I love that. I love that meme. That was like the greatest.
The other thing I love about his trip to Puerto Rico was that on the plane on the way back, he said, "This is unprecedented. A president has never done anything like this," talking about his trip to visit hurricane victims.
How many times have we heard that in the past 10 months?
He's the first one.
He's the first president to do
ever,
this.
ever.
Not
Wait,
do
wait,
this.
but think about this. Okay, it's not that he was forgetting when Obama did anything like that, or Bush's famous trip flying over Katrina, or any of the other visits to disaster sites. 2 weeks ago, he was here in Texas visiting
Houston.
Harvey.
Harvey
I'm trying
victims.
to remember the name of that hurricane, Harvey. And then a week before he was in Puerto Rico, he was in Florida to visit Irma victims. So not only is this not unprecedented, he did it already. Twice.
But he didn't
in the
really,
same month.
He didn't really do it. When he was here with Harvey, he was like, look at the turnout. It was all
He
about
was on a little
him.
box
him.
with
And
his
it-
megaphone.
Well, the visit to
Yeah.
Puerto Rico was all about him, too.
Oh, and did you see the whole press conference? They're playing certain clips of it, but if you see the whole thing where he's sitting at this little U-shaped table, he was basically, okay, you over there, tell us how great we're doing. Okay, now you're done. Let's get you. You tell us how great we're doing. And so he goes all around the table getting, and he literally says that. Tell us how great we're doing. And I'm like, what 3-year-old does this? So I kind of agree with Corker today, who said he needs a babysitter. You know, that it's the White House become an adult daycare center.
Pretty much.
Now, I was talking to a couple that I know who used to live here. They live in San Juan now, just outside San Juan. And I said, people that I know are looking for which organization they should donate to. So which organizations have you seen on the ground that are doing things? Do you know what the answer is? None. None. No Red Cross.
Can we just send it to the mayor of San Juan?
And I guess that, yeah, his, not the mayor of San Juan, but the wife of the governor, I think, has set up a fund. And I need to look into that and find where that is. But
I could just send it right to the mayor of San Juan, and she would get it, open the envelope, and go, okay, add that with all the other stuff, and let's go get, water for these folks, or food, or whatever is needed, because she's actually on the ground doing things.
She is.
She is.
I'm talking about, though, the regular organizations. When Harvey hit, there were so many organizations to donate to because so many places jumped into action. Organizations like the Montrose Counseling Center down in Houston, which is the largest gay organization down there, they set up a fund to help fund everything going on in the LGBT community. There were a number of churches, and I'm not talking about, what's his name,
Joel Osteen.
yeah, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about real churches that really care about people, who took people in and set up funds, and they're taking care of people. There was a lot of that, but plus they had organizations that were doing things, like food banks that were already there, who just expanded their operations and got food out, and none of that's going on in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
None
I
of
think
it.
you have to go through the individuals. Like, Mark Cuban lent J.J. Barea his private jet so he could fly supplies over there. And I know J.Lo and Mark Anthony have also formed to help. So, in this case, it really is the American citizens that are doing more than
Right,
organizations.
Yeah, several celebrities. I think Fat Joe, the rapper, has boarded up a plane and took a lot of supplies down there
Yes,
also.
this has really been an individual American.
Yes.
Because
one of
it's
the
an
things-
island in a big ocean.
In a big ocean, in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Water.
With water all around.
It's huge.
Patty,
And you can't drive your
Super
trucks
deep.
there. Yeah.
Like Patty, like we said last week, does he know yet that they're American citizens?
I don't think he does.
No,
does.
I still don't think he
You know,
knows.
if he gets taken to the most wealthy neighborhoods, so he doesn't see much damage. He doesn't see the real, flat nothingness, and he's like, "Oh, it's not too bad," And then he gets to he's throwing the paper towels, and he tells them, "Have a great time." What kind? Who does that? Well, we have one. We have one who does.
And just to give you a little bit more, okay, so my friends Meryl and John, they live on the 10th floor of a building that no longer has elevators because the elevator's flooded. Meryl is disabled. She cannot get downstairs. John is going down himself in order to pick up a few groceries that have been delivered to the area. The building is half destroyed. They happen to be lucky that their part of the building they can live in. I mean, the building would be condemned anywhere else, but they're lucky that they have a roof over their heads. Half of their neighbors, and by neighbors I mean people in their building, half of them don't. That's how bad it is right now. Anyway, on that happy note, Brandi, thank you for being our guest.
Oh yeah, this
Please
has been
come
so
back.
much fun. Most definitely. If I'm still in good with David, I'll definitely.
Oh, you won't be.
If
You can come back on my time.
Yeah, we can outvote David.
We can have both.
Democracy. This is how it works.
And we'll be back next week with another edition of Lambda Weekly. We'll see you then.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.